I recently had the opportunity to fly in a P-51 Mustang. Now, for someone who loves aviation, it was one of those experiences I'll never forget. And it reminded me of a lesson that's incredibly important in customer experience and AI, and how we can make a huge leap forward.
Welcome. You're with Brad Cleveland, bringing vision and clarity to customer experience, customer service, and contact centers.
The P-51 was the famous American fighter used during World War II, one of the most celebrated aircraft ever built. If you've seen Top Gun Maverick, you may recognize it as the plane featured in that final romantic scene when Maverick and Penny fly off into the sunset. But long before Hollywood popularized this plane, pilots who flew it in combat considered it something very special. The pilot I flew with is a United Airlines captain who's also certified on the Mustang and volunteers his time to keep these historic aircraft flying. We took off from North County, San Diego and headed south along the coastline. This plane moves right along. He generously let me take the controls for some of the flight. We went around the end of Point Loma, made a sharp turn over the Coronado Bay Bridge, and then flew back up the coast. What struck me immediately was how responsive this aircraft is. I can understand why it was so respected and admired by the pilots who flew it. As I reflected on that flight afterwards, it reminded me of an important lesson that applies directly to customer experience, customer service, and AI. The P-51 is often considered one of the greatest fighter aircraft ever built, but one of the most important reasons it helped change the course of the air war was a relatively simple improvement. Earlier in the war, bombers would fly deep into enemy territory, but the fighters assigned to protect them didn't have enough range to stay with them. They had to turn back long before the bombers reached their targets, leaving them vulnerable and contributing to devastating losses. The solution was the addition of external fuel tanks. That relatively simple enhancement dramatically extended the Mustang's range, and suddenly it could escort bombers deep into enemy territory and then all the way back home again. The losses dropped dramatically. The Mustang's capabilities didn't fundamentally change. What changed was that a critical constraint was removed, and that unlocked the full potential of everything else this airplane could do. I see the same thing happening in organizations today. Many leaders are searching for the next breakthrough technology, especially when it comes to AI. But often the biggest gains don't come from the most sophisticated technology. They come from identifying and removing the constraint that's holding everything else back. Maybe it's a policy that creates unnecessary customer effort. Maybe it's fragmented information that prevents employees from helping customers quickly. Maybe it's a poor handoff between AI and human advisors. Maybe it's an approval process that slows everything down. The organizations seeing the strongest results are often the ones that identify these constraints and then systematically remove them. Sometimes the real breakthrough isn't adding something new. It's removing the obstacle that's been limiting performance all along. The P-51 was already a remarkable aircraft. The external fuel tanks allowed it to become what it was truly capable of being. And that's a lesson worth remembering. In customer experience, customer service, and AI, the question isn't always, what's the next big thing? Sometimes the better question is, what's the constraint holding us back? Find that, and a relatively simple change can transform everything. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe. I share practical insights on customer experience, customer service, leadership, AI, and contact centers on a regular basis. And thank you so much for joining me.